Hey, Rob here for Quadratec.com. Last week, we got started on the buildup of Matt's 3-liter EcoDiesel equipped JL Rubicon. While Matt was away at the SEMA show, we had the opportunity to start stripping down his Rubicon, getting rid of the front and rear bumper, and getting those new AV heavy-duty differential covers installed on his axles to give him some added protection when he's out on the trail. Now, if you haven't yet had a chance to check out our coverage from the 2021 SEMA show, you can click that info button to head over to the Torque blog on the Quadratec website to read some great articles and coverage that Matt put together while he was out there. Well, now that he's back here on the East Coast, I know he can't wait to get his Jeep back. So today we're going to move on to getting the new suspension installed. So here on the table I have AEV's 2.5-inch DualSport Suspension. I went ahead and got everything unpacked and all of the components laid out here on the table so we could take a closer look at them before I move on to the install. AEV designs and engineers each of their suspensions to custom match any of the vehicle configurations available from the factory. So they're taking into account things like whether you have a 2-door or 4-door Wrangler, whether you have a gasoline or diesel equipped Wrangler or Gladiator. So yes, the suspension on the table is designed to handle things like the extra weight of that heavy diesel under the hood of Matt's Wrangler. Of course, we've also got new shocks, extended sway bar end links, all of our extended bump stops, hardware, and no, you're not going to see any control arms on the table. That's because AEV is utilizing their geometry correction brackets to keep everything in line with the front axle. We'll come back and talk a little bit more about those when I'm installing them. We've also got a rear track bar bracket, and something unique to an AEV suspension is the inclusion of their extended jack base. Now this is going to allow us to continue to utilize that factory scissor jack that came in your Wrangler or Gladiator. By placing the jack on this base, well, it's going to account for the added height of our new suspension. It also functions as a wheel chock should you ever need one, a very unique inclusion that we only see from AEV. Finally, we've also got their ProCal snap on the table, a very great addition to the kit because it's going to allow us to recalibrate the vehicle's computer for larger tires, things like gear ratios, and even transfer case ratios, so that we continue to have the correct readouts from things like our odometer and speedometer. Definitely important when we add larger tires with our new suspension. Now, speaking of tires, last week I revealed that Matt selected a set of 37 1250 Mickey Thompson Baja Boss all-terrain tires for his Wrangler. These tires are going to perform great whether Matt is simply asking them to handle daily driving duties or if he's putting them through more aggressive use when he leaves the pavement. As for wheels, I know I kept you guys on the hook. Well, here it is. Matt selected the AEV Borah wheel for his build. It is available in your choice of a satin black or, like I have here, the onyx finish, which absolutely looks fantastic. Has a lot of flake in there, and it's sure to look great on Matt's Snazberry Wrangler. Now you can run this wheel in multiple different configurations. You see I do have a silver removable ring here in front of the wheel. If we get that out of the way for just a moment, you can run the wheel just like this in its bare state. You could add the bolts around the lip if you like. Of course, you would simply mount the bead of your tire behind the lip of the wheel for very traditional use. Now, if you do need some added functionality from the Borah, you can move that outer bead of the tire to the outside lip of the wheel and then add AEV's true beadlock ring, which of course is going to clamp that outer bead in place, allowing you to run some extremely low tire pressures. Now, finally, you do have another option, which Matt selected, is to go ahead and utilize AEV's wheel protection ring. Now, while this looks very similar to the true beadlock ring, instead of leaving a gap here to clamp that outer bead of the tire in place to the face of the wheel, it's going to sit nice and flush with the wheel once it's installed, giving you the look of a beadlock, but the added protection of a sacrificial ring here on the outside of the wheel to help protect the face of your wheel from damage. Now, if this gets scuffed up and gouged on the rocks, Matt can always touch this up with some silver paint, or if it gets really too bad, he can simply take it off and replace it with a brand new ring altogether, keeping his wheels looking fantastic for a very long time to come. Now, before I get started, the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and get the wheels and tires loaded up and off to the shop to get mounted and balanced. And while they're over there and I'm waiting for them to get finished, well, I can start tackling that suspension. At this point, we've got all of the factory components removed from our rear axle, and I went ahead and got our track bar tower installed on the axle. It utilizes existing factory holes for an easy bolt-on install. As you can see, it raises the attachment point for our track bar up 3 inches here on the axle. Now it's details like that are going to help this suspension to maintain a factory-like ride and handling characteristics. Now we've also got some extended sway bar end links that we're going to be installing here in the rear. And if you have a gasoline equipped Wrangler, you're also going to be installing some sway bar drop brackets. Now with the diesel Wrangler, the def tank happens to be in this location, so we're unable to drop the sway bar down. Instead, AV has us drill a second set of holes an inch higher here on the axle side for the sway bar end links to attach. And again, that's another detail that AV has built into this suspension to really give you that high quality ride. Now I can go ahead and start getting our rear springs installed along with the shocks. And then I'm going to leave all of the bolts for our control arms, shocks, and our rear track bar loose until I get the weight of the vehicle down on the suspension after we're completed our install. At that point, I'll come back and torque everything to spec. From here, we can move up to the front of the vehicle, start by getting those springs and shocks out of the way, disconnecting our control arms so we can move on to installing those geometry correction brackets. So at this point, I've got our new springs, shocks, sway bar end links, and bump stops installed for the front suspension. Before we wrap up the install, by installing our new geometry correction brackets, I wanted to show you what the control arms look like in their current state. Now, mind, even though we are up on the lift here and the suspension is at full droop, this should give you a pretty good idea of what makes these geometry correction brackets so important. Now, if we take a look at the angle of our lower control arm, especially here for the front suspension, you can see what a steep angle this is. Now, in an ideal condition, you want this angle as horizontal as it can be, as parallel to the ground or as flat as possible. Now, with it in this steep angle like this, well, it's going to translate to a much poorer than stock ride, poor handling, whether we're on the road or the trail. Imagine if you're hitting an obstacle, either a rock or maybe a pothole. With the angle of this control arm steep like this, it's actually going to send all that energy up into the frame of the Jeep, translating to poor ride quality. If we're able to flatten that out and we hit an object, well, now it's actually going to allow the suspension to cycle easier, which is going to translate to better ride and handling. If we take a look at the geometry correction brackets, we'll see that we're going to be dropping down the mounting point for our upper control arm as well as our lower control arm. And if you take a look at this new point, you can see just how much flatter that's going to make our control arm here. By flattening that out, again, we're going to get much better handling, ride quality, and it's going to effectively elongate our lower control arms, pushing our axle towards the front of the vehicle, back within factory alignment specifications, giving us the correct caster angle, which is going to help our Jeep to track straight when we're headed down the road. Now, while I got everything installed here up on the lift, it's actually a lot easier to install your geometry correction brackets with your wheels reinstalled on your vehicle back down on the ground with the weight of the vehicle on the suspension. By only working one side at a time, it's going to prevent that axle from moving around too much on you, allowing you a much easier job of getting the brackets installed and getting the control arms realigned and bolted to the brackets. Now, here we are with the geometry correction brackets installed on the Jeep, and now you can see just what a difference it makes to the angle of our control arms. Everything has been flattened out, much less severe of an angle here. And remember, we're still at full suspension droop here on the lift, so once the Jeep's on the ground and that suspension compresses, well, the angle of our control arms is going to be virtually parallel to the ground, which will translate into excellent on and off-road handling. At this point, why don't we go ahead, get the Jeep down on the ground so I can get those newly mounted and balanced wheels and tires installed on the Jeep and get everything torqued and finish up our install. The 37-1250 Mickey Thompson Baja Boss ATs look fantastic wrapped around those AEV Borah wheels. Together, I think they complement the new suspension on Matt's Jeep perfectly. I like that AEV puts just as much design and engineering into their wheels as the rest of their products, and the AEV Borah features a hub-centric design with 5.72 inches of back spacing. That's a plus 25 millimeter offset. And what that does is give us the room we need to run a larger 12.5-inch wide tire while still keeping that tire and wheel tucked nicely under the fender without sacrificing things like balance, handling, or ride quality. I also like this great recessed valve valve stem here on the Borah to help protect that valve stem from any chance of damage on rocks or obstacles out on the trail. And the last thing we got to do to finish off these wheels is to install that wheel protection ring, but before we do that, I think I've got something else special in store for those, so you guys are going to have to wait until next time for those wheel rings. If you guys like these videos and you haven't already, do me a huge favor, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button as well as the notification icon, so be sure to catch the next episode of our build-up of Matt's EcoDiesel equipped JL Rubicon. Next time, we're going to be installing that aev-RX stubby front bumper. And as always, if you guys ever have any comments or questions about anything I installed on Matt's Jeep today, you can always leave those for me down in the comment section below or contact us directly at any of the options on the screen. Until next time, I'm Rob. I'll see you guys out on the trail.